urgent secret deal between Lukashenko and Washington behind Putin's back. Meanwhile, the smell of blood is already in the air in the Baltics. The Russian dictator found a way to start a new war right under NATO's nose. At the same time, Trump has dug his own grave. Americans are ready to oust the president in exchange for peace. An unexpected turn of events. Magyar struck the Russian Federation right before the Russians' eyes. These strikes have fundamentally changed the situation. The corridor for our forces to enter has been cleared. Moscow couldn't have imagined this even in its worst nightmare. The army is ready to oust Putin, the people aren't holding back their curses at the Kremlin, and the security forces simply can't cope. The start of a coup, all this in our episode, Hell's Point. Unexpectedly, Lukashenko ditched Putin and pulled off something shocking with the US. In Moscow, they didn't believe until the very end that the old man would do this. An agreement that changes everything. The dictator flies to Washington. Minsk is exploding. Lukashenko decided to try to step out of Moscow's shadow. The stakes are at their highest. The US opened a window of opportunity in an instant. Lukashenko is trying to balance until the very end. The only question is this a clever game or the start of a major break? You have to be the first to hear this. Years under sanctions, and once again the Belarusian Ministry of Finance, banks, and potash enterprises can operate without American restrictions. This is the result of Lukashenko's meeting with an American delegation yesterday, March 19th.
George, it's as if there's no war. These wars and problems have no effect on you whatsoever.
In response, the dictator agreed to pardon 250 political prisoners, but the American delegation didn't go to Minsk for negotiations to decide the fate of Lukashenko's captives. Donald Trump sent his people to win Lukashenko over to his side. It's not about the war in Ukraine, but about China.
Belarus has been considered by the People's Republic of China as a kind of bridgehead for the future for quite some time, for China to enter, for example, those same European markets. There was even a period when Belarus, due to the sanctions policy against Russia, made very good money on this trade and was a bridge between Europe, essentially European markets, and the Russian market. And China also wanted to take advantage of this. I'll remind you that the People's Republic of China has invested a lot in Belarus.
And for this, actually, Lukashenko received perks in the form of eased sanctions.
Restrictions will be lifted from the Belarusian Ministry of Finance, the Development Bank of Belarus, and Belinvest Bank. In addition, the Belarusian Potash Company and Belaruskali, which are the main producers of potash fertilizers, will be removed from the US sanctions list.
Officially, of course, neither side will admit to this. Publicly, the Americans say that they sincerely, Lukashenko's take on geopolitical issues is quite interesting.
We also discussed in some detail what Belarus thinks about the war that is happening in Iran, what the United States believes about the war in Iran, and how this situation is currently developing. It is always very valuable to get the opinion of your president, the president of Belarus, because it is a completely different opinion compared to what we can get in the West.
Yes, it's a different opinion, and Lukashenko says directly that the US is attacking his
friends. You are fighting against our friends, and I am ready to talk frankly about this topic.
But even despite this, the old man is a good and understanding leader, so he forgave Trump even for such mistakes.
I still, despite certain mistakes, as I believe of the United States, am a supporter of your president.
In short, the Americans' visit greatly pleased the Belarusian dictator's ego. But the old man has another reason for joy. He is being invited to Washington for a meeting with Trump. According to experts, the Americans, of course, wanted to demonstrate their strength to Putin as well.
This is also a kind of signal to the Russian leadership. This is a message that even within your supposed sphere of influence, we are able to play our own games, and your satellites, those countries that are closely aligned with you, will still listen very carefully to what we say and, in fact, to what we do, because we are the United States of America and everyone genuinely wants to have good relations with us.
So the logical question is how Lukashenko's relations with his powerful bunker ally will develop after this. Especially considering that this is not the end of US-Belarus cooperation, as it involves in particular the reopening of the American embassy in Belarus.
We have again held extensive consultations with the US State Department and other involved structures. Work is underway in this direction. I can't give you any specific dates, but the work is ongoing.
But does this mean that Lukashenko is ditching Putin? No, the cunning and mustachioed Colorado potato beetle will again try to sit on two chairs.
This gives, for example, Lukashenko himself grounds to think that if something happens there, if Russia starts to pressure him regarding direct participation in the war against Ukraine, well, he can use the support of the states and Russia will have to treat him a little differently. So this is also on Lukashenko's part a certain game. That is, he shows Moscow that you consider me your complete satellite, but I can once again sit on the fence.
The Institute for the Study of War is certain that the lifting of American sanctions against Belarus will directly benefit the Russian economy.
The Institute for the Study of War long ago concluded that Russia has effectively annexed Belarus and that both countries have a unified defense industrial base. Therefore, the lifting of US sanctions on Belarus directly benefits Russia's military efforts.
And another important point, lifting American sanctions is good for Belarus, but lifting European restrictions is much more important. And that won't happen, at least not for now. Of course, the issue of security plays a vital role. As long as Belarus is so closely linked to Russia, it remains a threat to Europe. But one way or another, the US has given Lukashenko a chance.
This is also a hint to Belarus itself. Don't do anything stupid, don't get involved in, well, the wrong things. And if Lukashenko plays by the rules and doesn't fuel this story, this hysteria about the Suwalki Gap and so on, then obviously his image will improve, if only slightly. But for him, it's not even about improving his image, you see. It's not about how the world perceives Belarus as Lukashenko's state. The main thing for him is simply not to be mentioned too much, and to avoid getting caught up in any new scandals. So he'll just sit there quietly under the radar. He's actually fine with everything being focused on Russia.
But will the Belarusian dictator live up to this vote of confidence? Only time will tell.
In an emergency move, Putin has gone through with it. Russia is preparing a document that gives them a free hand to invade under any pretext. Under the guise of protection, it's the same old scheme. Move in and take it by force. An unprecedented moment has arrived, the final stretch of preparations for an offensive against Estonia. Moscow is once again pushing the world to the brink. Can this fatal scenario be stopped? Let's take a look.
Putin wants to protect Russians abroad. The government has submitted a document drafted by the Ministry of Defense to the State Duma and published it on the lower house's website. The bill expands the Russian dictator's powers to use armed forces abroad, supposedly to protect Russians, in the event of their arrest or criminal prosecution by foreign courts.
To make absolutely everything look completely legally sound and above board, airtight as they say, with no loopholes or room for doubt, that's exactly why they want to pass these proposed changes. And so the relevant legislative initiatives are now being formally introduced to the State Duma for consideration and further discussion. Russian law has a criminal article for starting a war, and essentially, why was the word war never used in the Russian media space? Because starting a war is prohibited by the Russian criminal code. That's why they called it a special military operation.
The bill specifies situations where Russian citizens are arrested or detained abroad by courts empowered without Russia's participation, as well as by international judicial bodies that Moscow does not recognize. In such cases, the head of state, meaning Putin, will be able to decide on the extraterritorial use of the army to protect compatriots, effectively allowing him to legally deploy troops wherever and whenever he wants.
I link all these actions specifically to an attempt to create a distraction, to drown out the news that the economy is going down the drain. And it's been said many times that the war Russia 4 years or even more than that ago, it was said that if Ukraine doesn't surrender, this war will be to the last Ukrainian. Essentially, this war is turning into a war to the last ruble in the Russian treasury. And everything points to the fact that this last ruble might not be far off.
As media reports, the bill was introduced to the State Duma amid a series of warnings from NATO and European intelligence agencies about Russia's possible preparation for a conflict with one or more countries of the alliance.
Certainly, many people are talking about Narva right now. That's in Estonia. A territory in Estonia with many Russian speakers, and they say Russia might start there. Moreover, for those theorists, let's say, who model who Russia's next strike will be against, they don't ask if it will happen or not. They say that it will happen. They're just choosing the point where it will take place. The most popular scenario so far is considered to be the Suwalki Gap. This, let me remind you, is the territory between Belarus and Russia's Kaliningrad region along the border of Poland and Lithuania. The second version, which is gaining even more popularity and momentum lately, is the Estonia version, the Narva version. This is Narva, a region of Estonia bordering Russia with a large Russian-speaking population. It's said that the strike could happen there to test whether there will be a NATO reaction or not, because the conflicts we see in NATO now with no coordination between the US and European countries, they lead Russia to think that NATO is not a force, that NATO is a paper tiger.
In Russia, legislation already allows the use of troops abroad to repel attacks on the aggressor country's military formations, to protect another state at its request, to protect citizens from armed attack, and to fight piracy. The new bill, however, amends the laws on defense and citizenship, clearing the way for military intervention.
Breaking news: Donald Trump has backed himself into a corner. Instead of glorification, there's exile. Impeachment is no longer a rumor, but a looming scenario. The politician is panicking, going all in, and a ground operation against Iran is seen as a lifeline for his ratings. Meanwhile, things are heating up at home. The Senate is openly moving against Trump. A front has been ignited right in the heart of Washington. Ratings are crumbling and election failure is inevitable. Has the time finally come for the political collapse of the American leader? Let's take a look.
Trump is losing control, falling ratings, pressure from the US Congress, and increasingly loud talk of impeachment.
No other president could do the kind of nonsense that I do.
A separate blow to the ratings is Trump's foreign policy.
We are in a position of dominance that no one has ever seen before.
The escalation around Iran, harsh statements, and the risk of a new conflict are drawing more and more criticism within the US.
Venezuela was something that truly was, in every sense of the word, a beautiful and remarkable show. And for Americans, it went well, and they thought, well, it's not a war, it's a so-called special operation, which ends quickly and bloodlessly for the Americans. Now, American pilots and soldiers are already dying. From such small failures, a negative rating is forged. Trump, most of all, was counting on a short war, right inside.
The United States Senate and the political system as a whole, there is more and more tension.
The White House underestimated Iran's capabilities and started a military campaign without a clear plan for its completion.
There have also been changes in the government. A high-ranking official in the Trump administration, Joe Kent, has resigned. And he accused Trump of lying about Iran.
I realized that we are there for reasons other than those given to us by the government. And I said, if my turn ever comes, if I ever become an adult in this situation, if I have a responsible position, I will not, with a clear conscience, send young men and women to die in a foreign land.
Against this background, social tension is also growing.
If you could say something to Donald Trump, what would you say?
You're a pathetic piece of trash.
And how many times did you vote for him?
3 times. I guess it's my own fault. I'm probably an idiot.
But the pressure is not only coming from within. Allies in Europe are reacting more and more cautiously to Washington's actions. Many countries are in no hurry to support Trump's hard line.
The leader of the German far-right party, AfD, Alice Weidel, harshly criticized the United States operation in Iran. She stated that Washington started a war without an exit strategy. In
this case, Trump has gathered 3 out of 3. Dissatisfaction from the internal elite, society, and international partners. Even the long-awaited meeting with Xi in April has been cancelled.
I have to be here. I feel it. So we asked to postpone it for about a month. I look forward to meeting him.
And it seems the American leader has no options left. In
his books and in his speeches, at various stages, there was a phrase that is now being upheld. Never admit your faults. But I would add, shift the blame to others as much as possible. And so he partially shifted it onto China, on everyone, and the meeting is postponed. In other words, there is no trump card to bring along. And so everything that could have been sold as a success was not sold as a success.
However, despite the dissatisfaction, the United States is accelerating the deployment of troops to the Middle East. Trump continues to move forward, but for what purpose? In an attempt to strengthen his rating or, on the contrary, lose what he has?
Trump, starting this operation, thought that it was an operation, but in reality it's already a conflict that will escalate into a major war. It could escalate. Deadlines are already being pushed past September, and there's an ongoing analysis of what happens if it's not September, but even later. But everything after September is a net negative for Trump. Even if he manages to achieve some successes there, they won't be as significant anymore.
But despite all the global chaos that Trump has created with his own hands, he doesn't even seem to be ashamed. What's more, he continues to threaten other countries.
I think I'll have the honor of taking over Cuba. It would be nice. It's a great honor. I can liberate it or capture it. I think I can do whatever I want with it.
Does the President of the United States really care so little, and is he completely unconcerned about his ratings and the sentiment regarding US policy both at home and abroad?
For Trump, it's probably normal, because that's how he's lived his whole life. Even in business, his successes are, well, questionable, right? The fact that he realizes something is wrong is evidenced by his search for someone to blame. When someone is winning, there's no one to blame. There's only him, the one who's winning. Now everyone is to blame. NATO is to blame, Ukraine is to blame, and of course Biden is to blame. He's basically to blame for everything in this world.
Perhaps ahead of the House elections, the president decided to go all in. But there's a little over 6 months left until then. And if the Democrats win, the end for Trump could be fatal.
Trump, speaking to his party, said to do everything possible to win the special elections. Because if the Democrats win, they will impeach me. So he perfectly understands what's at stake. But, there's a surprising element here. That is, he fears this, yet he's attracting it with his own actions.
The American leader is left without allies, without Senate support, and just as importantly, without public trust. Then it seems every decision he makes buries him even deeper. And there's no turning back now. And who knows, maybe impeachment isn't that far off. It's hard to believe. Ukrainian drones have turned the world upside down. Mourning has been declared in Moscow. The dictator is being briefed on alarming news from Crimea. The peninsula's air shield has been shattered. Our forces are clearing the way. The Kremlin's Achilles heel has finally been found. Deep strikes by Ukraine's defense forces have ignited a hell of revenge. This you have to see. The front is consumed by fire. The occupiers' logistics are in ruins. It seems this is just a warm-up before the decisive attack. We'll tell you more about what's known next.
Another one of those unparalleled machines. A Ka-52 helicopter was destroyed by a Ukrainian drone. The successful attack took place in the Pokrovsk direction. The Alligator's crew has headed off to a Kobzon concert. On the night of March 19th, Ukrainian drones launched a devastating strike on the temporarily occupied Crimean Peninsula. The target was a plant for the production and repair of air defense systems.
In occupied Sevastopol, a strike by several drones critically damaged the innovation center of the Granite Enterprise, part of the Almazante concern. At this facility, they repaired and maintained S-400 Triumph anti-aircraft missile systems, S-300 PM2 Favorit, 92 N6E and 96 L6E radar stations, medium and short-range SAMs Bukem 2M3 and Tor M2.
2 days before this strike, the Ukrainian General Staff reported a hit on the Aviastar aircraft repair plant in the Ulyanovsk region. Shelters and aircraft parking areas were damaged. Some of the aircraft were also damaged. And similarly, a strike hit the 123rd Aircraft Repair Plant in the village of Stara Russa, Novgorod region. A hangar for servicing Il-76 and L-410 was hit. Satellite imagery confirmed the damage to the plant.
The enterprise that is engaged in the production of Il-76 and another enterprise that repairs similar aviation equipment were seriously hit. What does this tell us? That the component with transport aircraft, with tankers, with other equipment built on the basis of the Il-76, like the Ruslan, is now in serious question.
Strikes on the aggressor's military-industrial complex have become systematic. The AFU, with its middle and deep strikes, is creating increasingly serious problems for Russia at the tactical, operational, and strategic levels.
Ukrainian forces are conducting systematic efforts to weaken Russian air defenses and identify other valuable targets in the Russian rear as part of their air interdiction campaign at medium and long ranges.
Such a routine, in fact very routine element of the current war. Aviation and other plants of the military-industrial complex of the Russian Federation, at least those of them that are located on the territory of the European part of Russia, in general are becoming a regular target, a regular object of drone strikes.
The American Institute for the Study of War states that Ukrainian drone units have changed their tactics and strike targets since the beginning of 2024.
Ukrainian drone units are increasingly prioritizing and successfully striking Russian artillery, drone operators and logistical targets in the near rear to achieve tactical results. On March 17th, the head of planning for a Ukrainian drone battalion operating in the Lyman direction reported that Ukrainian forces have reoriented their drone strikes, prioritizing the destruction of Russian artillery, drone operators, ground lines of communication and bridgeheads rather than Russian infantry, which reduces the number of Russian attacks and allows Ukrainian forces to achieve local successes.
Starting from November 2025, the number of monthly strikes by Ukrainian troops at medium range from 50 to 250 kilometers from the front line has increased fourfold.
Any damage or harm to anything that, for example, affects the logistics of the Russian Federation means that fewer and fewer various types of weapons will be arriving, returning, or coming as new to the Russian army. And this will mean, in turn, the weakening of the air defense system.
The change in the strategy of drone system strikes effectively means the initiative is passing to the Ukrainian army. This was even indirectly confirmed by the Secretary of the Russian Security Council and former Minister of Defense Sergei Shoigu, who recently stated that there are virtually no safe regions left in Russia.
At this moment, the Russian Federation can no longer be saved. The revolution has begun. The dictator is sending security forces to Siberia. Farmer riots have spiraled out of control, and so-called heroes of the special military operation are standing up for the people. The army is ready to topple the dictator. A wave of mass discontent is sweeping over Russia like an avalanche. An irreversible process has been launched. Local authorities are suppressing discontent following old orders, but such methods no longer work. Now Russians are not going to remain silent. Has Putin finally pushed his own people too far? And what could this turn into for him? We're telling you all about it right now.
She was just living her life. Don't touch her, because if it's a heart attack, that's it. If you lift her up, she's done for. If it's a stroke, it'll be the same thing if you move her.
The war over livestock in Siberia is gaining momentum. After meeting with officials, farmers whose herds have been ordered to be slaughtered can't take it anymore. Civil servants are spitting in the faces of outraged villagers, claiming they aren't the ones driving them to despair.
She was alive, she was fine, and you?
Alexander Stepanovich.
What are you saying? A person can just collapse regardless of the livestock, don't you know that? Come on.
No, of course not. To say such things, of course, a person would collapse from that.
Stop.
Quiet.
So quiet.
Quiet, please.
Unbelievable.
No pity for people or for the animals.
And on top of that, they say she just slipped and fell on her own. Who is going to take responsibility for this? This isn't just about killing livestock, it's about destroying people. They are mocking people without any shame or conscience. They've only just announced they'll be destroying the livestock. What will happen to her when they actually come to take the animals away? And if something happens to her, my father won't be able to handle it. Because of your rotten politics and greed, I'll lose both my parents at once. What did we do to deserve this? People are living in a state of terrible anticipation. Mom said she's going to hang herself. Dad will also do something to himself.
A column of riot police visited the village of Kozika again, the name of which is echoing across all of Russia.
You don't believe in anything anymore. Not in the authorities, not in anything. March 20th, Kozika. There they go. Look, a whole motorcade. Look at how many of them there are. I'm just at a loss for words. This is the end. This is how the authorities treat us. Citizens who are asking for help to sort this out. And to stop this lawlessness.
Just yesterday, officials left here with nothing. A local farmer was supposedly given permission for an independent audit, but the next day they destroyed his farm. The female farmer from whom the official fled, who protested several times before the regional authorities, the police detained her.
They forcibly brought me to the station because they want to find out about my husband, apparently. In some case, they're charging him under Article 167 for arson as part of a group of people. Property worth $1,054,000, which was supposed to burn down, but now they've decided to charge him with arson because we're fighting for our rights.
So they just brought you in. Were there any calls to you in Moscow?
No calls, no summons. I didn't receive any. I'm publicly available and in contact with everyone. I go to the prosecutor's offices everywhere, to the administrations, to Travnikov's reception office. No one has ever contacted me. I've been walking around the city of Novosibirsk for a week now.
The authorities threw a veterinarian into the line of fire of the people's anger.
You're reducing the issue to a private matter. But we're talking about a mass tragedy. They're killing in the region right now. And you're narrowing the problem down to just Svetlana.
Because there's nothing concrete. Wait. It's a total violation.
Right now. I'm asking you because honestly, it seems like we're moving into a discussion that is starting to get a bit out of control.
So invite us into the office instead of standing in the hallway.
Everything will be handled according to what you are asking for. Rest assured.
And surprisingly, in the Novosibirsk region, the Kremlin got what it sowed. The new Russian elite, heroes of the special military operation, stood up for the locals. A public figure, a veteran of Chechnya and the so-called special military operation, arrived in the region to fight lawlessness. Order of Courage recipient Ivan Otrokovsky.
One thing can be said, they're trying to talk their way out of it, to mislead the people, that supposedly all this is being done for the good of the people, for the good of the cattle, to stop the spread of this terrible infection that came from nowhere, that's mutating and all that. We can see from the words and actions of the bureaucrats that this is a lie, that they're trying to deceive us, while misleading us that some farmers are already on their side. And here we see again, right, that they're even cheating on this. I mean, how can you trust them? Lie upon lie. That's it, we stand up for our people, for the nation, we fight for our rights. To all police and riot officers, do not follow the criminal orders of the occupiers.
While rebels in Siberia seek support from veterans, in Astrakhan they ask for help through a human rights blogger. They have their own trouble there. A local businessman is rounding up cows and sending them to the slaughterhouse. The law enforcement and the administration are idle.
They go out every day and work like this, taking the livestock, driving them from the fields. And the police arrived. We thought we expected help from them, but not one of them even budged. No one did anything.
Do you have any documents for the livestock or anything? I mean, on what grounds did they take them? Did you provide them with anything? Just to be more specific.
Well, we asked, give us some paperwork. Why are you taking them? For what reason? On what grounds? They didn't show anything. They said, it's a private enterprise. Ownerless, they said, claiming that our cows are ownerless.
But it's not just about livestock. Construction workers at an oncology clinic in Murmansk complained about beastly treatment.
The contractor there is a scoundrel. He didn't pay my acquaintances for the work they completed. He ripped off a crew of 17 people, claiming it wasn't per the plan, but they changed the plan 5 times on purpose. And after that, I see him pulling up in a brand new BMW. They're cheating everyone out of money there. The deadlines are constantly being extended. They're involved in money laundering by all appearances.
The workers were literally driven mad. Demanding their back pay, they locked themselves in a tower crane and staged a protest. Traffic police, the National Guard, and patrol officers stormed the construction site. The rebels ended up in a brawl with the law enforcement officers. That's all for now. I'm your host, Darina Gatskalo. More hellish news in our next broadcast. But for now, don't forget to subscribe and give us a like. See you.